Hey guys, so I wanted to make a video topic today about a comment that someone put on one of my posts recently, which was, what do you see tend to help people the most in withdrawal? And I'm too lazy right now to get up and go into my space where I normally film, and I apologize. I hope it's not too loud. I have my dishwasher running in the background, but I just wanted to just talk about this because it's a great question. And when you first discover withdrawal and you go onto the online communities, there's just this plethora of information that is completely overwhelming. And I know this was definitely my experience, and you don't even know where to begin. Like, you just are frantically searching. You're thinking there's a supplement out there that's going to fix you, there's some type of alternative therapy, diet, whatever it might be. And here's what I've seen, just as someone who's coached hundreds of people at this point and probably had thousands of conversations in my nearly 8 years in this community. And here's what I see help the most. So essentially, it's like you're putting back, it's like your whole building, like your body, has been kind of pummeled to the ground. And so now what you're needing to do is build it back from the ground up. And the way that you do that really is through building a base of good health. And I know when people talk about these things, it sounds so generic, so general, so kind of run-of-the-mill advice, but it really is, these are building blocks to your life and your health. And so what I've seen be helpful, I'll talk about helpful versus not helpful. So you're building a good base of health. You're focusing on the pillars, which are diet. And from what I've seen, diet, at least in my anecdotal experience, is not like a huge factor in people's recoveries. So obviously, when you're looking at it from a general health standpoint, it's important, which is what I'm talking about, but you don't have to get so hyper focused on it to the point where you have to be obsessed. You have to do a really restrictive diet in order to recover. What I have seen help the most is a blood sugar balancing diet. What does that mean? It means higher protein, fat, fiber, and lower carbs. And the carbs that you choose should be like whole food complex carbs, because what tends to happen is when you have too many empty carbs, not enough protein, fat, fiber, you're on the blood sugar roller coaster, even if you're not diabetic. And those, when you feel sort of that hunger, that ravenous hunger, hangry, that's a sign of low blood sugar, and low blood sugar always triggers an increase in cortisol, which doesn't help people feel good. So the more you can balance your blood sugar and avoid feeling ravenously hungry through protein, fat, fiber, the better. Focusing on sleep. Now, I know insomnia is a huge problem in withdrawal. One thing that I've seen and noticed is that insomnia tends to be one of the earlier symptoms to resolve. Does that mean that you're sleeping 8 hours a night after a month? No, but obviously, like, this journey is a journey, and there's a lot of symptoms for many people, and insomnia is a main one that many or most people experience. And so but in the course of this journey, it tends to be an earlier one to resolve. Not everybody though, but a lot of times this happens. And so focusing on, even if you're not sleeping or can't sleep yet, resting is important. And the things that I have noticed that can be helpful for people to try to get better sleep or more sleep, there's a few different things, and obviously everybody has different sensitivities, but in general, these are what help people. So I have noticed that, like, Epsom salts, and Epsom salts are magnesium. Not everybody tolerates magnesium, but I have noticed that people tend to tolerate it better when it's absorbed through the skin as opposed to oral. And the nice thing about Epsom salts is you can control the dose really, really well. So you have a bathtub full, and a general dose, at least where I live, is like 2 cups. So you could start with a pinch or an ounce or whatever and build up. And it tends to help people to really relax, especially if they have muscle symptoms, and it can help you to feel drowsy if you're in the water long enough. Does everybody tolerate this? No. So you have to proceed with caution, or just, again, because you can control the dose, then you can really start small and build your way up if this is something you decide to try. Another thing, strangely, is Celtic sea salt, which is really high in minerals. And my mom, who is has been a chronic insomniac most of her life, has really found a lot of help with Celtic sea salt. So you can put it under your tongue, dissolve it in water, put it on your food. It may or may not help you, but it's something that I've seen be able to help. And the third thing for sleep, actually there's four things. The third thing is like circadian rhythm work. So it trains your brain when to sleep and be awake. So if you can get your naked eyes out into morning sun, afternoon sun, 15 to 20 minutes each, and then shutting off as many screens as you can after sundown, or wearing like blue light blocking glasses can be helpful. It just helps the brain know when to tune things down in order to rest. Is this a perfect solution? No, but it's worth trying. And then the fourth thing is just your mindset and attitude towards sleep, because a lot of times what happens is you aren't sleeping, especially if you've always been a good sleeper like I was before I ever took these drugs and went into withdrawal. It can be very stressful and distressing to suddenly not be able to sleep. So if you can tell yourself, I'm just going to rest, that's helpful, and kind of lighten your expectation of sleep, that can actually be very helpful, because it prevents you getting into that spiral of like, I have to sleep. Oh my goodness, why am I not sleeping? When am I going to fall asleep? What time is it now? And you just really can spiral. I know I really experienced that when I was unable to sleep in withdrawal. So that's kind of like diet, sleep, and then movement. So many people have post-exertional malaise, flare-ups after too intense of exercise, or really too intense of anything. And so this was something I literally had to grieve in my own process. I always was an avid exerciser, loved working out hard. It was my stress reliever. It was my, like everything. It was the way I just coped with life and emotions that were difficult. And then I could not tolerate it. And I didn't even understand why for a long time in my journey. And so I had to like go down to walking, which I hated. Now I love it. And I actually continue it to this day. But, so things that people tend to tolerate is like walking, swimming, and then like low intensity exercises like yoga or maybe Tai Chi or something like that, which again can be difficult if you've been someone who's used to hard workouts in the gym, or just like HIIT or aerobics or weightlifting or whatever. That can be very difficult. I know it was for me, but also these things are important for building this base of health, of good health. And just like, I hate saying this because it sounds so, again, generic and like I'm talking about general stress, which I'm not, but just having stress management strategies. So again, the way that I approach this is your body is stuck in fight or flight, essentially, when you are in withdrawal. And so you want to get it into parasympathetic dominance as much as possible. Can you do this when you're in acute? No. Can you do this in a wave? Not really. To certain degrees, yes. But what I have found to be the most helpful for this is that when you're at a baseline or in a window, practicing these strategies. And I know a lot of times people will say, well, I don't feel the need to do things when I'm in a window or at baseline, but it really can be like coping strategies and way to just shift your body. It's that nurturing and stretching I talk about. So when you're in a wave and a flare, you're nurturing, doing as much self-care and nervous system coddling, I guess, as possible. And then when you're at a baseline or in a more of a window, that's the time to do more exposures, pushing yourself, stretching yourself, doing things that you have been unable to do because your symptoms in acute were so unbearably intense. So those types of things, and that varies a lot for different people. But I would say across the board, what tends to help is co-regulation is huge. So if you can be around safe people who have regulated nervous systems that you trust, you can be yourself around, that is very powerful, because when you are trapped in this body that is freaking out 24/7, it's very hard in that vacuum to be bringing yourself down. You really can't, or at least not all the time. So if you can have people that can just sit with you, be a safe space for you, that is really powerful. And I've seen that so many times as a coach, and I'm no like superhero, but when people are in such a heightened, hyper aroused, agitated state, and I can just sit with them and be with them, and they don't have to mask, they don't have to put on a show, they don't have to pretend like, or be worried that the person is judging them or gonna gaslight them and say like, what is wrong with you? You need mental help, just a safe space. It's so powerful to be able to bring that person into a regulated state in that time. And so again, bringing yourself into regulation, the more you can do that. For some people, somatic work is very powerful. So it's basically a mindfulness approach. Is, a lot of people become very terrified of their physical, mental, their symptoms. And so if you can spend time in somatic work or just sitting with your symptoms, you're not trying to change them, you're not resisting them, you're not judging them, you're not adding to the fear of what they already are. It can just sort of reset. It's like a neuroplastic exercise of your perception of symptoms. And I want to talk just very briefly about stress, because stress is a well-known cause of flares and waves for people. And this can be a wide range of different stressors. And the further out you get, it tends to take more and more and more stress to cause a flare. But sometimes people have the perception, and I did too, of like, so what, you have to live a stress-free life in order to recover? Well, I can say for sure that you don't need to live a stress-free life in order to recover. Your body builds more and more resilience to stress over time, but it's more your perception of stress. Because the interesting thing, if you can call it that, about this experience is everything always comes out normal. At least from my perception, perspective, it's the body's overreaction to normal things, or the brain's that overreaction that's causing so much of it. Because one thing that was so interesting to me was about cortisol. So many people describe cortisol dumps and rushes, and these experiences that I had as well, big time. Try to lay down, you just got this rushing through your body. You're hearing like gunshots and bombs go off in your head. You're jolting upright, and it's very startling. And so everybody says that, cortisol is just so high, but there's multiple people I've talked to and their cortisol is normal. So someone mentioned to me once that she was like, Melissa, I think what happens is your brain is on such high alert that any changes in consciousness or like normal bodily changes, so the rising of cortisol in the morning, the brain is overreacting to. And I thought that was a very interesting perspective and seems plausible. And also too would explain why people, when they go to sleep, like to take a nap. They have these toxic naps, or they go to just lay down and their symptoms increase. Any change in not relaxation, but consciousness, like when you're falling asleep, it's like the brain is hyper alerting to that, like something's wrong, like you can't relax, like we're in danger. We have to overreact now to keep you alert and safe. It seems like that's what's happening. And so with stress, it's the perception of stress. That is the big thing. Not that you have to eliminate stress, because obviously stress is part of life. And the changing of perception of stress can come with, or like the symptoms which are stressful can come with somatic work. And also this naturally gets lower over time. But some people find it very helpful because they're so afraid of their symptoms, understandably, to just sit with them and do body-based mindfulness techniques to try to change that perception and sort of like allow it and accept it, which sometimes I even hate those words because it sounds so oversimplified, but it really can be helpful. And I'll say it again, I've said it so many times on this channel, getting off the groups. Because when you are so entrenched in the groups all the time for years and years and years, trust me, it just does not help your experience. Because again, when your nervous system is so heightened, it's so overreactive, it's so sensitized, reading horror stories, which that's what the bulk of forums are, is not going to help your situation. It's not about like, oh, if you just get off the forums, you're going to be recovered. But exposing yourself constantly to those types of stories are only going to further heighten an already heightened nervous system. And I have noticed that clients that I coach who are less entrenched in the communities and less aware of all of the things that they should be afraid of, they tend to fare better. I've just seen that. Of course, it's anecdotal. It could be a huge coincidence, but that's what I've noticed. And the people who have spent many hundreds of hours researching this, again, for good reason, especially because you don't know what's going on, and that's how you figure it out, is usually through the forums. But the more you just research and go down all the rabbit holes, it just does nothing usually but just heighten and heighten and heighten your fears and your responses. And so just getting the general information, figuring out, like, if you're still on the drug, safe tapering practices, coming up with a plan, understanding the generals like windows and waves, the timelines, just figure that out, or find that, maybe a couple support buddies, and just get off. It'll only help you by doing that. And even people that I've talked to who have been entrenched and then gotten away, they will report that they do feel better. Are they recovered? No, but it just helps dial it down. And what you're always looking for is just moving the needle. All you're trying to do is move the needle, because unfortunately there's no magic bullet to just pull you out of this. And so you're always looking for strategies and things and signs that the needle is moving in the right direction. And so just those things, when you get off the groups and you notice you're like, I do feel a little bit better, that's the goal. Just a little bit, you're inching your way towards recovery. So that is definitely helpful. Am I a purist? No. And some people don't agree with that, and that's okay. I was very much a purist for my first few years, not my first few years, but in my second withdrawal for the first 2 years, probably. I'm almost 5 years off now of my second withdrawal, like second round of drugs, because I had 2 withdrawals. And I'm not a purist anymore, in the sense that, do I believe that you have to just avoid all chemicals and medications to recover? No. Because again, I've seen people live and live the perfect life in withdrawal. They take no substances, no chemicals, like no supplements, no over-the-counter medications, no vitamins, no antibiotics, no, and then they still have windows and waves. And again, because you're in such a heightened state, when people have the perception of there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can take, there's nothing that's going to help, that level of, it drives people to such levels of despair. Those are the situations that can lead to the horrific outcomes. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. And again, is it just about that? No. But when you are in the worst, most heightened, hyper-aroused state of your life, and there's nothing you can reach for, or if you say to someone, sorry, but there's nothing you can do. Yes, there's some people who are like, okay, I guess I just have to do, and there's other people who, when they're in a very vulnerable state, it's just like, I can't do this. Because even just what I've seen too, just with a psychological crutch, again, for lack of a better word, of having something in their back pocket, even if it's something like a beta blocker, which not everybody responds well to, I get that, but it has helped a lot of people, and it helped me, so that's why I speak about it. Just knowing that there's that option where it's like, if things get so bad, I can't tolerate it anymore, so I can take a propranolol and it will dial it down a little bit. Just knowing that will bring people's symptoms down. I've seen it. And so that's why I'm not a purist anymore, because again, I've seen people do everything right, avoid everything, and they still have windows and waves. And when people feel like they are completely trapped and have no options, it can lead to dire outcomes. And so I try to just, again, use a balanced approach. You're weighing the pros and cons. I obviously don't give medical advice. I just talk in generics, and I lead people to deciding what is best for them. Like, I just ask questions, we just evaluate things. Anyway, I just think that that's really important an important part of the conversation, just based on what I've seen in my years in this community. I don't personally believe that anybody is ever trapped completely. I just don't. And that's always the message that I want to give. And also, I am optimistic that, and I've seen it, like, people do get better in this journey. So you're building a base of good health. You're not adding to second fear by entrenching yourself in forums and research 24/7. And you're trying to shift your body out of sympathetic dominance when you can. And a lot of times that's through co-regulation, which is why we talk so much about support in this community, and me on this channel in particular, because it is such a powerful tool for people. And it's not about magic bullets. It's about, how do I shift things for 10 minutes? How do I move the needle? How do I bring things down a notch, even for an hour? That's what we're doing. And so, yeah, those are kind of the main thing. And another thing that is very important is to process the grief and the emotions, because when you get so stuck in the anger. Anger is the dominant emotion that I see, other than fear, obviously. There's sadness and despair, but anger and fear by far. Anger is probably even slightly ahead of fear. A tremendous amount of anger. There's chemical rage and there's anger at multiple different things. You know, people are mad at themselves, their families, their pharmacists, their doctors, pharma, God. Like it's very layered. And so it's very important to process that. And that looks different for different people, but not like I had an experience with a family member in my first withdrawal, and I was posting about my experience on social media, and she messaged me, and we stopped talking for a year because of this, because she said, "You're just so negative. If you would just focus on the positive parts of your life, you wouldn't have this, you wouldn't be like this." And it made me so angry. I didn't talk to her for a year. So that's toxic positivity. We're not talking about denial. Obviously, like, yes, you're looking for small wins. That's very important. But you're also deeply acknowledging and expressing the anger that you feel. Because just like with any grief journey, you know, there is a series of steps through the grief journey. It's very messy, but it's very important to like process your grief, right? Because you can choose to go and just drink all of your feelings away, but they catch up to you and you can get stuck in this. And so just acknowledging, and I mean, I don't know how many times I shouted at God and just this whole experience, and just let it out. And I felt safe to do that with my support people, with my mom sometimes. And that's really important, because if you just get stuck in this loop of, I can't believe this happened to me, I was a normal person before. And obviously you have to go through that, but you have to also try to move through that, and you can't rush it. But it's also important to acknowledge all of it and move through it as best as I can describe it, just like you do with grief. Because getting stuck in that for years and years and years does not serve you. It only hurts you. And I don't want to go off on too many tangents here, but really it's like getting to a point of acceptance is healthy. And that doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't mean just being okay with what happened. It's going through all of these emotions, all of these things, just like you would grieving anything else. And just at the end, choosing acceptance. Like, I can't change what happened. I'm going to do everything I can to get through this, and also to find purpose and meaning and maybe give back, whatever your goal is at the end of this. That's very, 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 very important. I can't stress that enough, because getting stuck in it just fuels, like, again, these heightened emotions of anger and fear. Second fear I talked about, and even the anger. It's just this feedback loop. You know, the nervous system, and then the anger fuels the nervous system, fuels the anger. It just goes and goes and goes. And you do it, but when you, and I talk to people at different stages all day long, and when people get to that point of acceptance, which is not, again, condoning bad behavior, it's just like, there's nothing I can do to change the past. This is what happened, and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to fight through it, and then my life is going to be different after this, and I'm going to make it different. And you reevaluate, and that's a really good place to be in. It's very powerful. I've witnessed it. I've experienced it myself. And so I wanted to say that. That's really what I've seen, because, and a lot of times, you know, people do get really focused on diet and supplements and honing in on these small things. Not small, but you know what I mean, like very narrow focused. And what I've seen help is it's actually broader and more general, and all the things that I mentioned in this video, rather than I've got to like detox, I've got to fix my gut, repair it, get rid of my dysbiosis, I've got to correct all of my deficiencies, I've got to increase my BDNF, I have to fast, I have to do, like, all of those things can be important and can be part of your journey. But it's also, like I've talked about in other videos, the approach to that. And the best approach is, if you do those things, this is building your general health, but it's not pulling you out of withdrawal, because withdrawal is a process, just like going to the gym and getting fit is a process. And you don't have to manually do all of these things in the body to fix it. And I always say too, like with supplements, which people tend to just, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. The most effective way, if you choose to take supplements, is find out if you're deficient in anything, and then do gradual integration of that. Do I think you have to do that? No, because I believe that so many of these things, the dysbiosis, the deficiencies, are a downstream effect of a nervous system that's stuck in survival. It's pulling all resources. It's using up way more resources than it normally would because it's in this survival state. And so in my experience, like once the nervous system gets to a place where it's regulated more and calms down, these things self-correct. But I never discourage people from exploring if they want to get a better picture of their overall health. It's all in the approach. I'm gonna replenish these vitamins and minerals. I really want to because most people do want to become the healthiest version of themselves because of this experience. So if you can approach those things, those tests, those supplements from just a base level, a broad overview, it's better than this is the one thing that's going to fix me, because then if it doesn't, or you have a reaction to it, I mean, people's minds just loop, it's catastrophic, it's, and so those things are also important. And I've seen, like, I have talked to one person who did correct their deficiencies and they felt better nervous system wise, but the vast majority of people are either reacting to supplements or the supplements are not making a difference. Maybe they are just, again, taking them for their overall health, which is good, but it's not the thing that pulls people out of this, in my experience. So anyway, I don't want to go off on too many tangents. That's just what I see. If you have any questions, maybe there's even some things that I forgot about, let me know. But that's really it. And understanding that for a lot of people, again, this is very, very general. Most people I talk to have been polydrugged, kindled, reinstatements gone bad. It's rare that I see just one drug on, one drug off, a straight withdrawal. It's rare. It's generally acute is the first 6 months, but even more so 2 to 6 months, because a lot of people have a honeymoon period in the first month or two, or even 3. And then it chops up into windows and waves from 6 to 18 months. And then between 18 to 24 months, people turn a corner. Does that mean they're 100% healed? No. Some people are, but it usually means a great shift in level of functioning and ability to cope with the symptoms. Or maybe there's just a few symptoms left that are not even as disruptive as they once were. And then just you're building more and more resilience past that 2-year mark. The nervous system is finding strength again. It takes more and more and more and more to trigger flares past that. Or you're completely done at 2 years. But that's just a very general overview of what I see. Okay, so I forgot to add this into my video last night, and I think it's important, and that is to be careful about avoidance. So when people's symptoms flare, they naturally want to make a connection to something. So right when symptoms, or they'll look to whatever happened or was happening right before their symptoms flared up, whatever they were ingesting, eating, whatever activities they were doing, and they're trying to make a connection, which is natural. But the thing is in this process, your brain is playing tricks on you, so it's not super reliable. So the way that I talk to people about this is look for inconsistencies. So here's an example. For me, like every time I would work out beyond like walking or light swimming, my symptoms would get markedly worse every single time. And so I would try it, and then it would flare things up, and I would just shelve it. And so the key here is to talk to yourself about it in a temporary way. Like, my system can't handle this right now, but it's not always going to be this way, because naturally, again, your brain goes to worst case scenario. Like, this means I'm never going to be able to do A, B, or C ever again, which is not true. And another example would be, say, driving. So one day you go driving and your symptoms seem to be worse when you get home. You're feeling like vibrations, discomfort, burning, tension, whatever your symptoms are. But then the next day, or even a few days later, or whenever it might be, you go for a very similar drive and you don't have any flare in symptoms. So this is what I'm talking about. If you start to avoid driving based on one flare up or whatever, and you just start avoiding, this can become a trap, because I have seen people do everything perfectly and avoid everything, and they're not doing anything that's stimulating their nervous system, and they are still experiencing windows and waves, because that is a part of the process. And so you just have to be mindful of that. And also, the brain is hyper aroused, so it's searching for danger. So if you start labeling things as safe, not safe, dangerous, when it's only happened, say, one time, and the next time you were fine, then that can again become a trap. And it's easier to push through those things now, even though it's uncomfortable, than further down the line when you've been avoiding things for so long and your brain has flagged so many things as dangerous that then you try to push through. It's easier to do it now. So that's a way to sort of navigate that. And one of the videos and channels that I reference many times on this channel that I really like how he explains these things is the histamine deception. Because in his story, he talks about how he was so allergic to everything that he would take, supplements, medications or whatever, and he would have, like, his eyes would be swollen, he would develop hives, like real physical objective things that people could see. Like, that's how powerful this effect can be. But then there would be other times when he wouldn't flare at all taking the same thing. And so that's not like a true reaction. It's just the brain turning on symptoms because it's perceiving threat. And that's how strong. So the symptoms are very real, but the reactions aren't necessarily real in the sense that they're true reactions. It's just the brain turning on symptoms because it's in such a hyper aroused state and it's over responding. Just like I said earlier in this video, where you can have normal cortisol levels and other things, but the brain is overreacting to changes because, again, it's in a state where it's looking for threat. It thinks you're in danger. It's in survival mode. So it's going to keep you safe however it can by turning on symptoms. So I just wanted to share that as part of this video as well. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Let me know how you guys are doing, if you have any questions or comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.